destroys reason. And I would suggest that from deep green environmentalism to Israel, from United States foreign policy to the origin of the universe, and many, many other issues and topics, the West has replaced truth, evidence, facts, reason by ideology. Now we see that the West is itself facing an external enemy from aggressive jihadi Islamism. In the Islamist onslaught, the West is confronting a religious ideology which hijacks evidence and distorts and falsifies it for its own ends. That's Islamism. But as I've already tried to show you, the West itself has been doing precisely the same thing to reason and to evidence in its own terms. And, you know, the correspondences, the similarities between Western progressives and Islamist fanatics, the similarities are really remarkable. Both Western progressives and Islamist extremists are attempting to create utopias to redeem past sins. Both permit no dissent from the one revealed truth. Both demonize and seek to suppress their opponents. Both project their own bad behavior onto others who are in fact their victims. Both are consumed by paranoid conspiracy theories, and both involve a wholesale repudiation of reason. Both Western progressives and Islamist extremists repudiate reason. And the West has gone down this road in order to allow the full and unimpeded flowering of the individual and the fulfillment of his or her personal needs and desires. The Islamists have gone down this road to subjugate the individual in submission to religious dogma. But they're both engaged in the same business of enforcing an ideology through coercion. What is even less understood is that the onslaught upon the values of the Hebrew Bible isn't just an onslaught on the moral codes, putting constraints on our behavior. It's actually an onslaught on the source of Western reason itself, because far from biblical religion being the enemy of reason and of science, the Hebrew Bible is the foundation stone of Western reason and science. For the development of science, monotheism, the belief in one God, was essential, and a particular God, a God who was personally involved in the development of the universe. As the Oxford Professor of Mathematics and Christian, John Lennox, has put it, quote, "At the heart of all science lies the conviction that the universe is orderly," close quote. This is absolutely fundamental to science, and this fundamental insight came from the Hebrew Bible with its revolutionary proposition that the universe was governed by a single God rather than the whims of many gods. Science grew from the novel idea that the universe was rational and was therefore susceptible to rational interrogation of its doings. And that belief that the universe was rational was given to us by the book of Genesis, which set out the radical proposition that the universe had a rational creator. Without such a purposeful intelligence behind it, the universe could not have been rational. There couldn't have been the natural laws upon which science is based. And so there would have been no place for reason in the world, because there would have been no truths or natural laws for reason to uncover. By contrast, atheism, which we're told is where reason comes from, atheism holds that the world comes from a random and therefore irrational source. The world, we're told, is a random constellation of circumstances. It's an accident. It's not purposeful. And so it's therefore irrational. The world comes from an irrational source. And so reason is an accidental byproduct and therefore of negligible significance. And so it's atheism that is innately hostile to reason. And it was religious people, such as the early Christian thinkers Anselm of Canterbury and Thomas Aquinas, who propounded the view that there were comprehensible laws in nature which could only have come from a rational creator. That's why so many scientists from the earliest times onwards have been Christians and Jews. It's why Francis Bacon said that God had provided us with two books, the book of nature and the Bible, and that to be properly educated, one must study both. It's why Isaac Newton believed that the biblical account of creation had to be read and understood. It's why René Descartes justified his search for natural laws on the grounds they must exist, because God was perfect and so acts in a manner as constant and immutable as possible, except for the rare exception of miracles. Why the German astronomer Johannes Kepler believed that the goal of science was to discover within the natural world the, quote, rational order which has been imposed upon it by God, and why Galileo Galilei said that the laws of nature are written by the hand of God in the language of mathematics. As the writer C.S. Lewis wrote, men became scientific because they expected law in nature, and they expected law in nature because they believed in a lawgiver. The further point of great significance, I would suggest, is that it was not religion in general, but the Hebrew Bible in particular that gave rise to science, and that's because of the revolutionary nature of its propositions about creation. The Hungarian Benedictine priest Stanley Jakey has shown that in 7 great cultures, Chinese, Hindu, Mayan, Egyptian, Babylonian, Greek and Arabic, the development of science took place, but it was truncated. All made discoveries which carried human understanding forward, but none was able to keep their scientific discoveries going. And Jakey attributes this to 2 critical reasons. First, science could only proceed on the basis that the universe was rational and coherent, and thus nature behaved in accordance with unchanging laws, and that was impossible under pantheism, which ascribed natural events to the whims and caprices of the spirit world. The second crucial factor was the Bible's linear concept of time. This meant that history was progressive. Every event was significant. Experience could be built upon. This is something not given to cultures whose concept of time is circular. It goes round and round, has no beginning and no end. The biblical concept of time is linear, has a beginning and it progresses. And that's essential also to science. That's why we have scientific progress. And so, embodied in the great medieval universities founded by the Church, faith in the power of reason accordingly infused Western culture and stimulated the rise of science. But that has now taken a terrible turn. For the reasons that I've tried to suggest, abandoning biblical faith has meant dumping the rule of reason as well as the rule of conscience. According to the Catholic theologian and Cardinal Henri de Lubac, the God of the Hebrew Bible liberated humanity from being the plaything of the gods or the passive victims of fate as they were in Eastern or classical antiquity, to become instead masters of their destiny and to bend history in a humane direction. But what biblical believers see as liberation, atheists see as slavery. For secularists, human greatness means rejecting the Bible as a program to remake the world. And Henri de Lubac concluded, quote, "It is not true, as it is sometimes said, that man cannot organize the world without God. What is true is that without God, he can only organize it against man." The result, I would suggest, has been the tyrannical ideologies of the modern age, which has forgotten that the rationality upon which it prides itself and the science that flows from that rationality owe their existence to biblical religion. And the result of this amnesia is the repudiation not just of reason, but of humanity itself. As Pope Benedict XVI wrote, quote, "The radical detachment of the Enlightenment philosophy from its roots ultimately leads it to dispense with man." Close quote. Abolishing the biblical God has abolished the rationality and freedom bestowed in his name. Because here's the thing, in our age of reason, the outcome, the result of dispatching religion in the name of reason is that the West has now become so open to unreason. While scorning biblical religion as superstitious and irrational voodoo, our society now promotes such nonsenses as paganism, pantheism, witchcraft, parapsychology, healing Christianity,